45 has staken his re-election on one of the biggest lies ever being told. 45 has spent the last 24 hours tweeting manically about trade, repeating the absurd falsehood that China is paying us billions in tariffs. We keep hearing that this shows that 45 doesn't understand how tariffs work, and technically he doesn't. But this is better seen as a straight-up deliberate lie, a lie upon which 45 has staken his re-election campaign on. A long-term trade war with China now looks plausible. 45 just hiked tariffs to 25% on $200 billion of Chinese goods. Moments ago, China just announced it will retaliate with $60 billion in new tariffs on over 2,000 U.S. goods. If this continues, 45's lie about China paying us billions in tariffs will become ever more imperative for him. That's why it's such a big deal that Faux News' Chris Wallace debunked this falsehood by getting economic advisor Larry Kudlow to admit that China isn't paying for the tariffs. In fact, that in fact they amount to a tax on U.S. consumers. But this lie is not a mere superficial sign of 45's failure to understand how trade works. Rather, it's becoming central to the political strategy he will employ if we see protracted trade hostilities. 45 is in a jam on trade. 45's trade war has put him in a jam. Revamping trade with China was a central campaign promise, but if 45 agrees to a deal that does not win real concessions, that will reveal his agenda of toughness as hollow, particularly if those concessions do not appear worth the pain that the tariff wars have already imposed on farmers, but in the very region that's crucial to his re-election. So the New York Times reports that 45 is now hoping to flip the political calculus. No deal followed by still more tariffs will allow 45 to proclaim he's still being tough on China, which he's not. Incredibly, the Times reports that 45 apparently believes this will be a political winner, even if increased tariffs impose still more economic pain. Technically, this will be a loser for him. Here's where 45's lie comes in. How was this even possible? Enter 45's lie, the new convoluted story he's telling us. Basically, that the money we take from China and tariffs will be given to farmers in exchange for their products, which we will then exported will then be exported to other countries that need them. It's unclear how this would work, but 45 is set to approve another round of financial aid to farmers hit by this trade war. Basically, the claim will be that continued tariffs are a good thing, which it's not. 45 is in effect taking money from China and giving it to his voters. These are three possible resolutions here, as Heather Long explains. We could end up with no deal and a full-blown trade war. We can end up with a bad deal. U.S. companies don't get improved access to expanding Chinese markets, and many tariffs remain. Or we could get a good deal and end to an unfair Chinese trade practices, access to Chinese markets, and real enforcement mechanisms. The lie that China is paying us tariffs will be necessary if one of the first two scenarios happen. The third could still happen, but even if it does, 45's lie is still just that, a lie, and it's obviously central to his backup plan. 45's narrative about China repurposed. Notably, this backup plan repurposes the story that 45 has told about China for years, that China is robbing U.S. workers blind. Throughout 2015 and 2016, he claimed that China is ripping us off and is our economic enemy, which they're not, targeting us with the greatest theft in the history of the world. It's true that China is a bad international actor and that 45 did tap into real grievances about globalization, but as Paul Krugman notes, Trump 45 hasn't built an international coalition against China's abuses. Instead, he's waging trade wars on multiple fronts, alienating allies, so the one with China is better seen as an outgrowth of his desire to tear down the international trading order. In this regard, go back to and watch 45's closing 2016 ad. It depicts a shadowy globalist pilot via imagery of George Soros, hint hint, Asian businessmen, Democratic politicians, and Chinese sweatshop labor. The story globalist elites are enriching themselves by pitting foreign low-wage workers against U.S. workers. The better answer to the story is the progressive trade agenda, which includes international wage and labor standards and real investments in displaced workers. Some observers look at 45's trade wars and will still manage to see hints of his supposed economic populism, in which 45 vowed to defy GOP economic orthodoxy. But given that 45 has gone all in with GOP plutocracy on taxes and shredding the safety net while punting on infrastructure, the three areas where he supposedly defied that orthodoxy, the real story is obvious. 45's economic populism remains operative only in areas that satisfy his xenophobic nationalist impulse to attack other countries as their enemies, immigration and trade. Indeed, it's no accident that 45 also vowed to make Mexico pay for his border wall, to punish Mexico for sending us their outcasts and pitting them against U.S. workers, similar to his claim about China. Central to this whole tale has always been the idea that 45 will take back for U.S. workers what this alliance of elites and foreign workers is stealing from them. He would take back what is rightfully theirs. That is, I alone can fix it, which he can't. Given all this failure on China could be catastrophic for 45, so he's just swapping a news story. He's making China pay restitution to U.S. workers by forcing it to pay us in tariffs.